All right, all you positive heads. On this week's Soul Share episode, I'm very excited to have my dear friend Zoe Dane here with me on the show. And we're doing something a little bit different for this episode because, in addition to being a hypnotherapist, a tantra teacher, sensuality guide, she is also the host of the Better It Gets podcast. So we decided to do a mashup episode that we will both release on our respective shows. And yeah, super excited to mix it up with you, Zoe. Hello, Zoe. Welcome to the show. So excited to do this little mashup with you.
Hey, Brandon. Me too. I love that we just concocted this special episode together.
Yeah. So, guys, we
Idea.
we we had talked about recording on each other's shows, just kind of back to back. We do Positive Head, then we do the Better It Gets, and then Zoe and I, being infinitely creative, said, "Let's do a mashup." It's been years. I used to do that from time to time with other podcast hosts, but it's been a long time since I've done it. So, yeah, let's throw something creative in the pot and see what comes out.
Yay. And I love novelty, so this is exciting.
Yeah, exactly.
Awesome.
Exactly. So I was just talking to my mother about this like the other day. She's like literally like getting on my dad how regimented he is with his schedule and how much she likes like novelty and something out of routine. And
Spontaneous.
yeah. So yeah, she'll be proud of me.
Aw. Hi, Brandon's mom.
Well, I would love to start off, and we'll just see how this goes. We can ping pong questions, whatever is clever, whatever feels natural. But I'd love to start off with my cliche opening question for you, and it is this: You're in an elevator. The woman next to you looks over and says, "What's your passion?" You have 10 floors to answer. What do you say?
My passion is helping women come home to their power to serve the world, to live their dharma. That
Beautiful.
in a
Well,
nutshell.
yeah, that's the quick elevator pitch answer. Sometimes people give me like a 3 minute answer. I'm like, that's the Willy Wonka answer where you shoot out through the top of the building and into outer space. But you were concise and
I guess I
precise.
would I
So
would add one more piece is becoming a love alchemist. I'll probably quote Marianne Williamson quite a few times in this episode, but
mm,
helping people return to love and then create like devotional union in service to the whole from that love.
I forgot to mention to you that we talked about this. Now, guys, Zoe and I were roommates at one time. We're in real life friends, and I was telling you how Marianne was going to be on the show, and then she on Positive Head, and then she um, decided to run for president again after Biden dropped out, and then had to cancel, and then she ended up just recording. I haven't even told you this yet. So this show is coming out. Actually, it's going to come out right away because I don't have a lot ahead. Like sometimes I'll have weeks in advance. Sometimes I release it the same day. So last Wednesday was Marianne's episode.
What?
This Wednesday release will be Zoe Dane. So yeah, this is going to come out like immediately for me.
Wow, that is so special. I literally was like quoting her this morning.
Wow. Yeah.
Congrats, that's
And
epic.
I haven't told you this yet, that she's coming to the Mystic Manor to do um, a Mystic Society event. And it looks like we're trying to get it
Whoa.
all scheduled now. Yeah. So hopefully you'll still be in town.
Oh my
If
God.
not, you need to come back because she'll be at your old place giving a talk. And yeah, we're going to film it with Optimistic, the late night style show I used to do. We're kind of starting to do again, like a streaming version of it. And so it's going to be exciting to have her here.
I will be there. And this feels like the serendipitous thread of
Yeah.
magic that I feel like we're
Yeah.
going to talk a lot about today.
Yeah. Well, yeah. So if you would just take a few minutes for my audience who's not familiar with you, to, just share a little bit about your background, whatever feels relevant to share to give us an idea who you are and
Mhm.
how you got here.
Okay. So I could feel this like dharmic calling when my beloved and I started to unify like almost 6 years ago. And I was led, actually, speaking of serendipity, I see everything as God, as provision, as the universe, nudging us into our greatness, into our dharma, into the service that we are here to embody, right? And when he came into my life, he was very established in his work, in his career. And he'd be like, babe, like, what's your passion? What are you doing? And at the time I was
Mm-hmm.
nannying and catering. I was still in service, but I wasn't
Mm-hmm.
there. And so I was
Yeah.
like, you know what? This is the nudge I need. And I go, okay, universe, please show me the way. Please show me the signs. And I'm also a firm believer that if something repeats in our field more than 3 times, that's a nudge. That's a big fat breadcrumb going here this way. So I was like, okay, what
Agreed.
are the breadcrumbs? And I was led to HMI College of Hypnotherapy, which is a year-long college. And my mom went there. And when I was little, I remember I was graduating on stage at elementary school, and they're like, what's your dream occupation? And I go, hypnotherapist. And I just thought it was such a cool word. So cool that my mom was one. And lo and behold, when I was, I believe, 22, I go to the hypnotherapy school. I call them up. They're like, we have an orientation, and go to the orientation. They go, school starts in 2 days. I go, okay, I'm in. So I was in hypnotherapy college. I was learning all these modalities. I was also receiving the power of hypnosis, working with a hypnotherapist on my subconscious beliefs. And it's this very gentle way of creating new neural pathways, creating a new story from the inside out, right? And then lockdown hit. And I was like, okay, I can feel the world is in fear, but I feel like invigorated to serve and
Mm.
to show up in this caliber that I have always known was there. But now I feel like I have to. Like I feel like it's my duty to show up in this way, my responsibility. And so I remember I was on this hike and I just felt like the earth, the sentience of the earth goes, Zoe, it's time. And I was like, okay. So I just went home, and during lockdown, I started to unravel my own essence and service layer by layer, day by day, and diving deep into these practices that I would then be sharing with the world. And I started a private practice from the comfort of my own bedroom, started serving. My prayer every day was, God, please bring to me those that I can best serve at this time. And
Mm.
please show me the
Beautiful.
next steps forward. And then that just like kept evolving into what I do now, which is a combination of hypnotherapy, intuitive feminine mentorship, tantra yoga, embodiment, and all of these different practices to bring people home to their deepest depths and to resensitize themselves to the magic of life and their own existence.
Wow. That's beautiful. And, you know, having been around, spent so much time with you in real life, I've seen your dedication to your path and your practice, and it's super inspiring because you're fairly young, and you found your path and are just full all in on it, committed, and it shows and it's felt. And yeah, it's been just super exciting personally to see you with your podcast blossoming and just watching your advancement. So I'm really excited to see what all continues to come forth from you, and yeah, where you take it all from here.
Thank you, Brandon. I just want to share with the listeners that this podcast came through when I was living at Mystic Manor, which is Brandon's epic portal of a spaceship home in Venice. And maybe we'll go into that in a moment. I would love to ping
Mm-hmm.
pong it back to you for my listeners. But while I was living there, I had a podcast called Dripping in Divinity, and that is now turning into its own thing. But I was then led to create my own podcast, and I was like trying to figure out the name for months and months and months while I was incubating at Mystic Manor in the God
Mm-hmm.
Room. When Karen and Brandon
Mm-hmm.
invited us to move into the God Room, that felt like what I call a big flirt from the universe, a big
Yeah.
synchronicity.
We named
And
all the rooms, yeah, when we originally moved in, and that was the God room. There's a God, goddess, and on and on. But
And at the time, I was really connecting with the masculine principle of the divine, because I've been so connected to the goddess and the feminine principle of the divine for so long, noticing that
yeah.
there's been a resistance toward God, the masculine. So it was like this invitation to come in, incubate, heal.
Mm.
And yeah, and then the Better It Gets podcast was birthed and under your roof. So,
Yeah, I remember
and he
this.
also gave me a bunch of tips and pointers too. So, Brandon, I'd love to ping pong it back your way and just ask you, like, how did you get started with your journey, and what led you to the Mystic Manor, to naming these rooms, to the entity that
Hmm.
is Mystic Manor, and to
Hmm. Hmm.
starting your podcast?
Yeah. Well, let's see. Uh, going back quite a ways for me, mid 90s, when I first started having my spiritual awakening, similar probably to the age you were, you know, going back pre-COVID, you said 6 years ago or whatever. So yeah, I was, very, very young, and started, just having, I remember I met a woman who claimed to have some intuitive ability. And I grew up very conservative Christian. And so this was something I hadn't really been exposed to too much. And I was very intrigued. And then when I saw her do things that validated some of her claims, I was like, wow, there may be something to this. I started reading books. I remember I was reading a book on out of body experiences and telling my brother about it and how this book claimed you could leave your body. And he was like, "What are you smoking, bro?" And, he went from making fun of me one day about it to, the next day. When I was reading the book, I remember I shared with him, like, well, they say you could do it through meditation or through becoming lucid in your dream state. And then if you become awake in the dream, you can say, "Oh, I want to leave my body." And that's an easier way to just jump out. And he's like, "Well, I think you're crazy, but that this lucid dreaming thing you're talking about is actually real, because I used to do it as a kid. I would wake up in the dream and, decide I could do whatever I wanted in it." And so by talking about it, it triggered him to actually that night have a lucid dream for the first time since he's a little kid. So it was really cool validation for me early on, because here's my brother, who I'm super close to, kind of making fun of me for even believing any of this stuff, one day to the next looking like he's seen a ghost, because he had a lucid dream. He remembered what we talked about in the dream. He left his body, and he said, "I was standing there staring at my body, on the bed, and moving my hand in front of my face, and it's pure energy." And it just, it was a really cool validation. And then from there, I just, it was like wide open. I started reading books like, Conversations with God came out around that time. Who I had Neil Donald Walsh, the author, on Positive Head recently, or about a year ago or so. And that was a big top of my list, kind of like Marianne. I mean, I wanted Marianne for a long time too, but I know she's been a huge mentor for you. Conversations with God was some of the most, influential books in my own life. So having Neil on was amazing. And, I can only think, because it's my dharmic path to do, I've done this podcast since 2015, over 2,000 episodes,
Wow.
I started out, at that time, going back to late 90s, mid to late 90s, I was just so lit up, like remembering, tapping into this idea that we're all one with the source consciousness that creates and animates all things. And as I say, remembering, coming back together with the truth of who and what I am. And so I would talk to anyone who would listen about it, and back then it wasn't quite as like in vogue as it is now. We both are in transformational kind of conscious community, and surrounded by people who are like on this path, and aware. But at the time, I mean, I was living in Nashville. If people were like, I'd talk to anyone who would listen about it, and I can only think, because it is my dharmic path to do what I do. And people were like, "Dude, either you're crazy or that's interesting," and go about their normal life. But I persisted, and it's one thing to understand the stuff theoretically, and that didn't take long, and it's another thing to apply it to your life in a way that's truly meaningful and in getting it right, let's call it, and life throws things at you, and it's all out the window. Mike Tyson said it really well. Everyone's got a plan till you get punched in the face, and life punches you in the face quite a bit. And so it's been a multi-decade journey of, now how do I really implement? How do I really walk the talk? How do I, bring humility to the lessons and all those things? So it wasn't though until 2015 when I launched this podcast that, if you listen to episode 1, going way back then, you'll hear me say I had to launch this podcast in order to, stop my friends and family's ears from bleeding, hearing me talk about this stuff. I need a new outlet, someone else to hear me wax poetic about the ultimate nature of reality. And that was the intention. And here we are, a decade later, pretty much. And it's been a fascinating journey, and, to teach as I learn. We often teach best what we most need to learn, and I've gotten to do that, publicly and for a long time. And the show has reached a lot of people, which has just been the greatest. I've had some cool wins in my life. A win with business, Inc. fastest growing private company, and some cool stuff like that. Plenty of failures, but a few big wins. But nothing has been more rewarding than if I'm ever feeling down, or I misstepped, because I have some of those feelings about some of the ways I've navigated things. I'll go to Apple Podcasts and just start reading reviews, thousands of reviews. I was suicidal and this changed my life, or whatever. And that's just like, okay, I've done something of value by helping people, helping, even if it's just one person, right? Much less thousands. Or so it's definitely been the most rewarding work that I've done. A lot of things, serial entrepreneur my whole life, but nothing as rewarding as the show.
Beautiful. I mean, yeah, that's Dharma in a nutshell, right? You're seated with this unique codex, and it's always kind of like haunting you and tapping
Mm-hmm.
on you. And maybe you're
Mm-hmm.
misunderstood for a while, right? But then you start to like find your people because you're honoring that that's really true for you. I think, that's kind of like the standard way that we come into, we don't grow up around these kinds of philosophies and this kind of these kinds of practices. I remember I actually started waking up to manifestation when I was 16. And I realized
Wow,
I was,
really young.
yeah, and I grew up in LA. So the things I was manifesting were celebrity parties and crushes that I had on, people that I saw as influential and whatever. It was a game to me. And so I would
Yeah.
wield my feminine power in a way that
Mm-hmm.
was not coming from my soul. It was very, very much my ego, but I realized that something was happening. Got to the point where I'd come back to school and I would tell my friends about the weekend I had. And it was one of my,
Yeah.
my favorite things to do. And they'd be like,
Yeah.
Zoe, how the what? You
Yeah.
manifested like being in the exact scene of your favorite show with all of the characters like dressed in full attire, like to a
Amazing.
T. The manifestations were
Wow.
so uncanny and to a T that at one point I had a dear sister and she was like, at the time, and she was like, Zoe, like this is manifestation. And I was like, what does that mean?
Yeah.
So I went down
Mm-hmm.
a rabbit hole. My mom's always been really spiritual. So I went to her bookshelf and I saw this book called Frequency. I started reading Frequency and I started reading Law of Attraction and I watched The Power. I believe that was out around that time, or, it was leading to that. So
The
I
Secret.
started The Secret. Yeah. And then The
Yeah.
Power is the other one by Rhonda Burns that's all about, the power of love. So it was first like kind of this like ego manifestation space. And then I realized that was very devoid of spirit and like the things that I really wanted. So then I shifted my path around 18. I stopped hanging out with everybody in Hollywood because I was going to these big celebrity parties, flying around in private jets, doing crazy things that were not satiating my soul, but they were cool stories. And
Right.
then I met my first like love of my life, and he was very, very grounded, and he helped me kind of like he was like a bridge to Kundalini yoga, to being vegan, to all of these like healthier ways of being and living. So the pendulum swung really hard. And
Wow.
then around 20 is when I accidentally went on a DMT experience because I'd been learning about all of these cosmic laws. My mom gave me a book called The Universe is a Dream, and it's a comic book. And I'd be at school, in high school, my friends would be like, Zoe, come do this, do that. And I'd be like reading in the corner, going, no, I'm unlocking some crazy truths that I know are real, and I've never had the
Yeah.
articulation for it. And then yeah, around 21, I accidentally, I don't know how to explain this. This is a very interesting story, but I wound up doing DMT. I was with a quote unquote shaman. And I think that's an important thing to highlight too. Like when we're wanting to peek behind the veil and we can feel that there are these truths wanting to be unearthed, sometimes we get ourselves into these situations that, aren't super safe and where the vulnerability can kind of be preyed upon. And I remember I was with this shaman and he was like, okay, you're ready for this medicine. And I'm like, okay. And he was like, it's really expensive, but I'm going to give it to you for free. You feel like you're like really ripe for it. And I And I
Mhm.
did a little bit of it and I blasted off into, it went infrared, the whole room. And all of a sudden I
Wow.
blasted off and I wasn't in my body. I was fully fractal consciousness. It was
Wow.
all sacred geometry. Everything was one. And I was just like, and then once my consciousness started coming back a little bit, because it felt like I was there for infinity, I'm like, wait, what about my mom and sister? They were the only
Mhm.
things I cared about being real. And then I started
No.
coming back slowly but surely. And then I started hysterically laughing as the universe kind of went back into physical formation. And it took me 2 months of trying to integrate this experience. It was so hard to be human after it. And then
Wow.
I was led to somebody who really, really, he just like sat me down, looked me in the eyes, and is like, Zoe, you are not who you think you are. We are all one. You are me. I am you. Time doesn't exist. And it was like my experiences up until that point prepared me to actually really receive and remember this truth. And I remember
Truth.
going out that night and I'm like, I'm just going to fully enjoy my human. Like
Mhm.
it's all so temporary, but we are infinite, you know, and I'd already gotten the
Mhm.
infinity tattoo. And I'm just like at this ecstatic dance yoga class that my mom brought me to. And I'm like fully in my wild, I don't give a fuck what anyone thinks about me. And then at the end of it is when I like see this gentleman like sitting over in a corner talking about like infinite truth. And I walk over to him and I'm like, oh my God, maybe he knows. I'm like, are you talking about the fact that we're all one? And he was like, something like that. And it was Teddy,
Oh, wow.
who is now my
Wow.
fiance. So it was like
Wow.
that moment of revelation was like the pinnacle point where we met and then our journey
Wow.
began.
Wow. I did not hear that story leading up to you guys meeting. So wow, very cool. That's you definitely came in and were blasted open pretty early. And I think it's interesting though that you did get those experiences early on, seeing the power of, wielding the power that you have in a way that was maybe, like you said, a little more superficial or what have you. But nonetheless, it's like, I think it's an important point. Like a lot of times people, I think, get the idea like, only really spiritual people can, manifest things or whatever it may be. And at the end of the day, these, just like the law of gravity, you don't even have to understand how it works. If you step off a cliff, you're gonna feel the repercussions of the law itself. And so it's not something that is like you know withheld for people who are spiritually aware or not to manifest and create things in their lives. And I think that's really interesting that you got to kind of experience what you did so early on and also learn how to be more responsible with it and things like that. So very cool.
I would say, like, for people listening who might feel that way, oh, I need to be super spiritual to manifest or this or that. Like, the way that I started to flirt, now I call it now flirting with the universe through intentionality was like I would be at a coffee shop and I'd be like, I would just start small and I just wanted to
Mm-hmm.
prove to myself that I could do it. You know, it's just kind of letting it compound on itself and showing yourself that you can do this, flirting with the universe, seeing what's here, right? And knowing that you know, you deserve what you desire. And so I would be there and I remember this one time I sat there and I was like, okay, I'm gonna play with the law of attraction right now. And I was like, I really want some more tea. And I was like, I don't really want to
Mm-hmm.
get up and go get it. And
Mm-hmm.
moments later, I like let it go, right? Because that's the big art of it is
Big
holding
part of it.
the desire and just letting it go and starting small if you're just starting out on this journey. And then I remember the cashier comes up back over to my table and he's like, "Oh, can I take this for you?" And I was like, "Sure." And he goes, "Do you want some more?" He's like, "I'll give it to you on the house." And I'm like, "Sure." And I remember it was like,
Yes, I do.
yeah, little moments like that where I'd be like, and then I would start tracking it in a journal. I always say
Mm.
journaling is how we commune with the universe. You know, it's one way I love to do it. And so like
Mm-hmm.
tracking these things, you know, and it shows you it allows you to stay in that frequency. You know, another way to track and stay in that positive optimistic frequency is like gratitudes in the morning and writing down your wins at night, and it starts to create this arc of positivity, right, where you have these bookends of your day where you are really calibrating to what is going right and well, and how can I stay
Yeah.
attuned to this and how can I attract from this place. But
Totally, totally. Yeah. I was never a big I know journaling is like so popular with so many people in our community, and it's not something that I ever felt super called to do, and I've just started doing a little bit of it recently and even this morning, and I really enjoyed the process more than I thought. Before it to me I guess it always felt like, oh, I love to write. I mean, I wrote a book a few years ago. Writing's always been a big part of, since I was a little kid. I had some stuff put into magazine and things like that, and so it's always been something I'm really
mm,
passionate about, but it's also like felt like work.
mhm,
And I get really anal about what I write and like want to make it perfect. And what's
mm,
cool about the journaling that I'm doing is like just being really free flow, really like creative, really, maybe it's just some keywords written really big on the page that I want to focus on for the day or whatever, just not having that. Well, we talked earlier about structure versus openness, and so I found by bringing that to the experience when I do it, it's made it something that I didn't think I would ever enjoy as much enjoyable.
oh, beautiful. Yeah, I hear a lot of people say that about journaling. I mean, it can feel like a chore. I had a
Yeah.
client who's also now my business coach. Um,
Mm-hmm.
we are like doing a trade right now, and she shared with me that she's taking a pause on journaling, and
Mm-hmm.
she was directed by one of her other mentors to just write questions, to be
Mm.
in conversation with God. One of my
Mm.
mentors always says the quality of your life is a reflection of the quality of your questions.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so instead of journaling, yeah.
That is conversations with God. I mean, I don't know if you know Neil's
Mhm.
story, but he was, homeless and like, I mean, he started writing questions to God after like a car accident, losing his job, losing his partner, had been homeless. I mean, it just like his life completely fell apart. And he started like writing questions like, in a state of, you know, upset, if you will. And then he started getting answers, and that became, the Conversations with God book. So I think that's interesting. And speaking about psychedelic experiences, I heard through an ex business partner about and a good friend of mine about another ex business partner who um, who had recently done iboga, which I'm sure you're at least familiar. It's kind of like they say ayahuasca is grandmother, and which is DMT based, and iboga is like grandfather. It can be even more intense and more kind of masculine energy. And so I thought it was interesting though, hearing the story of what this ex business partner had done. He'd done multiple day iboga uh, experience, and during it, um, he had the experience of sitting down with his higher self and asking, um, and there he is, the most beautiful experience, like him and his higher self communing with his higher self, and asked, what is my purpose? Why am I here? And I think the answer was like, to be at peace, to find peace, to
Hmm.
be at peace. And he's like, and he's an older guy. At this point, he's probably 60, I would guess. And he's like, why didn't you tell me this earlier? And the higher self's answer was, why didn't you ask? You never
Mm,
asked. And that's,
mm,
I think really important. Like asking the questions is very important. So I think that's a really powerful perspective and piece of advice. Like, yeah, what are the questions? Put them down, and really put them out there, and then expect and be open to receiving an answer. I think you always know the answer if you don't ask, right?
mhm. I love that. Yeah, I mean, and then that like to piggyback off of that, I feel like that is also the power of prayer. Like to me,
Mm-hmm.
the power of prayer, the way that I utilize the technology of prayer is like really being in deep, deep, deep gratitude and thankfulness and acknowledging that, right? But also going, okay, God, Goddess, Universe, Divine, highest benevolence, what is the next step here? Please reveal to me the highest path for the highest and greatest good of all through me and my actions, right? And that's the way that I've started making the biggest life decisions. Like even our move coming up, it was like we knew that we were about to move. We kept trying to figure it out from our will, right? And that's something
Mm-hmm.
Marianne Williamson talks about a lot too, is our will versus God's will. And any 12-step program emphasizes this as well, right? It's like,
Yeah.
where did you take your will back? That's likely why you're suffering, because God's
Yeah.
will can be translated to love, loving thought, right? And so when we take our will back, there oftentimes is some ego in it, right? And we're not
Yeah.
really honoring the, the divinity of what's unfolding or what wants to unfold for us and through us. And so I just said out loud, okay, universe, where reveal where we ought to be. And the next morning, his sister randomly sends us a voice note of our astrocartography, which for those of you that don't know, if you look up your astrocartography, it's your natal information, and then it shows you where on the map of the globe you will thrive the most and where your different points are for your career, for your identity, all these different pieces.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
she leaves us a voice note, and then she just keeps, saying where she thinks we ought to be. And then all of these other synchronicities dropped in, which allowed us to land on our decision. But it
Mm-hmm.
was literally right when I asked that it all
Mm-hmm.
started dropping in. So it's like, whatever you're moving through in your life, how can you frame it as a question and then, you know, honor and have faith? I think that's the biggest piece too, is the faith. It's like constantly flexing those faith muscles. How
Yeah.
much are we surrendering to love, to the benevolence
Yep.
of the universe, to where we're meant to be in the universe? And how can we ask questions and have that be our form of conversation with that benevolence, like Neil Donald Walsh did?
Yep. Right. Right. Yeah. I think one of in my book, The Golden Key, one of the keys that I share is trust the mystery. It's like
Mm.
I always like to say, you're playing checkers and your higher self is playing chess. So just know you're making decisions based off of you have an idea of your wants, desires, and so forth, based off of your level of understanding of what your higher self's ultimate aim is, which is more consciousness, more growth. And so understanding that you're kind of playing from a limited vantage point. So you can set your intentions and your wishes and dreams and desires, and all those things are beautiful. But like you said earlier, it is of paramount importance that you're willing to then release them and let them go. And it's like, okay, that or something better, because I don't
Yes.
really know. I can think I have an idea based off of all of the information at hand, but I'm playing checkers. My higher self is playing chess. And, like Eckhart Tolle says, a lot of people navigate their life from this idea of, I'm here to be happy. And somehow I'm getting gypped of that. The aim of the game is happiness. And I'm getting shortchanged to some degree because I'm not as happy as I should be or would like to be. And that's the big misunderstanding, fundamental misunderstanding, because you're not here to 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 just be happy. Certainly, that can be a part of it. What you're here is to become more conscious and more aware. And so, and that doesn't mean always getting what you think or what might be the rosiest path. And so, I think that is it's so key as you navigate to, like, okay, this or something better. I'm going to trust the mystery. And if it's happening for me, not to me and through me. And there's something in it for me. And that's the only way to navigate. And once you put on that lens, it makes the bitter, stuff. It doesn't mean you're never going to feel it, but now it's okay. Okay. That sucked. That hurt. Okay. Why did that happen for me? What is the lesson there? What is it trying to show me about myself? And once you get that fundamental, switch in your mind, in your heart, and start navigating from that place, it's such a easier way. It's not easy. It's easier than thinking, oh my gosh, I'm supposed to get my way. It's supposed to be all roses. And, if not, something's wrong. It's like
Mm-hmm.
oftentimes the challenging thing is coming up because something is right, because you're ready to actually process that energy that is, a part of your being. That's like, okay, like even with health issues, um, I was reading something a while back, and it really jumped out as an interesting thought. Like, when you have something that comes up, like your skin is flaring or whatever, and you're like, oh my gosh, what am I doing wrong to have this thing happen? Well, actually, your body only releases those toxins when the other things that are more, it prioritizes, like, this is top priority or he dies. This is second priority. This is third. Okay, he's healthy, she's healthy or sustained enough that we can dump these toxins, which now is causing the skin flare up in this example. And I think that's a really interesting thing as well to consider, like, when something's going wrong, it's like, oh, you're actually ready to process that energy.
Right. Oh, such a beautiful piece and perspective. And that like reminds me of, it's like, it's also similar to when we finally feel safe with somebody or in our lives or in ourselves, all this stuff starts to come up from childhood, like in a
Mm-hmm.
relationship. We find a
Right.
partnership where we feel really safe and at home with that person, right? But it's ultimately so that we can heal these unresolved wounds from childhood, right? It's the imago. We attract our opposite so that we can bring this stuff up. And sometimes we're like, damn, this is so hard. Being in
Yeah.
a relationship is so hard. And it's a mirror, right? It's to see these pieces and have them revealed so that you can evolve into that next iteration, right? If our purpose here is to grow and evolve, then these are all guideposts for that. And what you just shared is so powerful because in those moments of challenge is when our faith is strengthened the most, is when we get to pray and learn the power of prayer the most. It's when we learn ourselves on the deepest level and learn that we are capable of alchemizing, and holding that vision of the better it gets, the better it gets. Just like you
Mm.
said, this or something better. God,
Yeah.
please show me how good it can get. And I remember
Mm.
when I lived at Mystic Manor, I've
Mm.
already shared about this on my podcast, but it's just such a powerful story of exactly that because it's like it doesn't happen overnight. You practice this. It's like working out. You're
Yep.
working out your faith muscles. You're working out through like becoming embodied in these prayers and having them be a way of being, right? Knowing that the external is very unpredictable, but if you're tapped into the vein of love and growth and expansion, then you can alchemize whatever comes up. And when I lived at Mystic Manor, it was the new year. I've got my
Mm.
web designer, like we're working on my new website. I go downstairs to go to a Kundalini class. I'm feeling on top of the world. And my car that I loved so much with
Mm-hmm.
my angel number on it, 777, like this
I
magical
remember.
car that came into my life is gone. Just
It was pretty
gone.
much a new car too,
It was
right?
only
You'd
like
only had it a few
5 months
months.
old.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'd got it right before moving into Mystic Manor.
Yeah, I
And
remember.
it felt like part of the synchronicities that led me to the manor. And there was literally no trace of it even being stolen. There was no broken glass. There was nothing. It was just gone. And I remember I was like, I was shocked. And of course, there were the human emotions that came up, but I still went to Kundalini. Teddy took me to yoga, and I just worked with the Kundalini practice to let go and to go to what I call the 0 point of dissolving my attachment to anything in the physical world, to my identity, to my attachments, my material possessions, even though I loved that car so much. And I would
Mm-hmm.
talk to it and I would write it down in my gratitude journal. I trusted that something better was to come. And it wasn't my dream car. My dream car was a Model 3 pearl white Tesla with black interior. And so I was like, okay. It was when I was launching The Better It Gets. And I'm like, okay, if I'm really embodied in this prayer, then I'm going to hold true to that prayer of the better it gets, the better it gets, and know something better is on its way. And about 7 months later, right when I actually launched my website, is when I was gifted my dream car, which is a Model 3 pearl white Tesla with
Wow.
black interior. And the way that it happened was so serendipitous. And I
Wow.
was like, this is the prayer in real time. I could have been
Yeah.
harping on the fact that I didn't have a car for 7 months, and I made the most of it. And I knew that when it was time, my car would come in. And when it was my
Yeah.
dream car to a T, I was like,
Wow.
okay, this
Wow.
is that in motion. Pronoia, the
Yeah.
belief that the universe is conspiring in your favor and
Always.
walking
Yeah.
with that belief.
Yeah. Yeah. That's an awesome story. Yeah. I'd heard through the grapevine. I hadn't talked to you directly, but yeah, I'd heard from Teddy that you got a new car and it was a Tesla and your dream car and all of that. And like, wow, what an awesome, thank you, thief. Like, oh
The
man,
funny thing
what a
about that
trip.
too is they didn't just steal my car because they were like, "Oh, we found it." They lit it on fire and it was unsalvageable. And so it was
Wow.
this statement of, okay, how are you going to rise through the flames? This like phoenix rising statement, right? And I
Mm-hmm.
find that there's so much metaphor in these things that happen in our lives, you know. And one of my favorite quotes that was given to me during one of the toughest periods of my life was a quote by Christopher Wallace, who wrote Tantra Illuminated. And it is, throw yourself into the fire. Nothing true shall perish and nothing false
Mm,
shall remain. And if we're really
mm,
devoted to truth, then we will be willing to go into the fire time and time
mm,
and time again so that only
mm,
truth remains.
mm. That makes me think of Charles Bukowski said, all that matters is how gracefully we walk through the fire. Or something, I'm paraphrasing, it
Mm.
might be a little off there, but basically that. And so, yeah, you're going to be in the fire. Are you going to be graceful about it? Are you going to, know what you just said? Hey, anything that's untrue is going to be burned away. Anything that's true will remain. So I'm going to, I can kick and scream, against everything that's happening, or be, as graceful as possible as I am transmuted. And certainly the path of least resistance is going to be choosing to be graceful, right? And
Mm.
I think it's something that you looking back in hindsight, you'll feel more proud about too, right?
Right. Which takes practice. It's not an easy thing to do, to
For
sit in
sure.
the fire and to burn and to like choose faith and to choose grace and to choose to trust, right? But every
Yeah.
time we do it, it reveals that when we are in that place, when we are in those depths, right? Because we never stay there. It's like the ebbs and the flows and the peaks and the valleys, and knowing that when we're in the valley, like we can honor what we're learning there, and when we're in the peak we get to celebrate and really like revel in it and honor it and know that it's all cyclical, right? Yeah. So Brandon, you touched on your book The Golden Key. I would love to hear a
Mm,
little bit more about that and how
yeah.
that came to be, because I feel like all of this is in that book.
Yeah. So the idea of the book, and by the way, I'm happy to gift the book to anyone listening while I'm thinking of it. I'll just throw it out if that's okay with you. If you go
Yeah.
to goldenkey.gift, and you use the code love at checkout, you can get the audio and or ebook as a gift. And yeah, the as often happens with me, I had a dream that sort of led me to the idea, and then um, woke up from the dream and started thinking about what the title of the book would be. And then I searched and found someone had written, it's The Golden Key, Modern Alchemy to Unlock Infinite Abundance. And then I started searching. I think The Golden Key would be a great title for this. And the vision was, I want to summarize, you know, I definitely can talk at length, 2,200 plus episodes of the podcast. It's a lot of information. It's like, how do I distill my perspectives on the ultimate nature of reality and my nuggets of wisdom and sharing others into something really concise that's, 100 pages or so, and it ended up being about a little over 3 hours to listen to, or 100 pages. And that was the vision. I want to be more concise than normal. And even that, wow, writing a book, such an undertaking, but that's how it ended up. And so I started like looking. I got the idea of The Golden Key as the title, and sure enough, like searched and found someone like 100 years ago had done, or almost 100 years ago, had done a short essay called The Golden Key that was like similar to the idea I had in the dream, which was like introduce this gamification element to it, and kind of a playful thing. And I found this book, going back. 1930s, or this essay, and it was similar. It was sort of like this gamified thing. And then I saw it had been published on Amazon on my birthday, and I have a lot of
Mm.
synchronicity with my birthday. And so yeah, and then it just kind of went on and on from there. I mean, I share a bunch of synchronicity stories in the actual book. One is around the cover art on the book, which there's a picture of in the Manor right near the front door. You may remember, like the key. um,
Hmm.
so so yeah, so just had a bunch of synchronicity, and really I just kind of lay out, like, a lot of this information, like you said, as concisely as possible. And okay, if I were to make some keys of, what I think are the ultimate keys, if it's as concise as possible, what would they be? And that's, you know, ended up being 8 keys. And um, yeah, and put it out during COVID. So 2021. So yeah, it's been cool. It feels good to. I know a book is something that you also are planning, I believe, and
Mhm.
so. But I don't know if you've told me what the topic is, or maybe if you have, I
I'm
don't
still
recall.
allowing it to reveal itself. That's the way I
Cool.
work with the universe, and I am hearing that's the way you do too. And something that we're really touching upon in this episode is allowing ourselves to be vessels to
Right.
receive the downloads, the inspiration, the synchronicities, right?
Yeah.
I find that synchronicity is, it's something that's repeating in your field. And if you're really
Mm-hmm.
like attuned, you can start to feel in your body what happens when it comes into the field, right? I
Yeah.
always say that about the angel numbers too. It's these angel numbers that repeat in the field. We hear a lot about them, but I always advise for my clients and anyone I'm talking to who's new to this to really feel in your body like what you feel around specific numbers, around specific people, around specific topics, and to
Mm-hmm.
follow that thread, right? Because usually our body knows. Our body is the GPS. And I find that most people have a specific number sequence that when you see it, it's like, oh, wow, that's the one that really feels like it's guiding me the strongest,
Mm-hmm.
right? For me, that's 777. For some people,
Mm-hmm.
that's 222, and so, um, yeah, there was something I wanted to share on just honoring serendipity, because if you're listening to this and you're like, okay, what's my dharma? What's my path? I have these things incubating in me, but I don't know exactly how to deliver it. Um, Ask the universe, flirt with the universe. I came up with this, I think, with you, Brandon. You and I were
Yeah,
talking
I
about
remember.
synchronicities.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I remember.
Brandon
I
and I were
love it.
talking about synchronicities in Yosemite, and I was like, the universe is such a flirt, isn't it? And he's
Mm-hmm.
like,
Mm-hmm.
it's such a flirt. And
It's
at
such a
some
flirt.
point, you were like, it's
I
kind of
love that
a
that stuck for you too. That's like such a cool. I'm really glad I got to share that moment with you and to see that you have continued to talk about flirting with the universe
oh
because
my gosh.
you hear winks and you hear but flirt is a very very. Speaking of flirting with the universe, last night I was having a moment of um, just thinking about some kind of like challenging, sticky things and feeling a little sad around it and just not super upbeat and, some heavier thoughts. Um, and I all of a sudden just got a random text of a heart. Don't know who sent it. Don't know who it is. It was
Oh,
just like a heart. And it felt like that. It felt like, oh,
oh,
someone cares. Someone beyond the veil.
oh.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, that was
Oh, well,
cool.
I hope you're feeling better today and that heart
Yeah,
really.
that's the thing about those sorts of feelings. It's like what I've learned is I used to ride the roller coaster of emotions a lot more. Where it's like uh, way up or way down, but buying it as me, instead of,
Mm-hmm.
um, you know, once again, Eckhart Tolle talks about this in Power of Now so well, and I think it's part of the reason that book did so amazing because people can really relate to this idea that you have this, these thoughts or ideas or energies that come over you. You're a multifaceted, multidimensional being, and so when you have your pain body is, as he refers to it, is instigated. It's now a part of you that comes online where you're angry or upset or hurt or whatever, frustrated. And that's a part of you that wants to be healed. And so it's being brought to the surface. Instead of this is me, you're looking at it more of like the observer of like, it's like a cloud passing. And it's like, well, hold on. If I'm observing it, well, then who who am I really? You're the unmoved mover, the observer that's been there when you were 9 and will be there when you're 99. Just observing your higher self in the background, and that creates separation between you and the emotions or the ego self. And so now you can let it be what it is. You don't have to resist it. You don't have to, but you also don't have to like take the bait, hook, line, and sinker, if you will, and like, oh my God, this is who I am, this is where I am, and I'm gonna own it fully. It's like, oh,
Right.
what if there's separation between you your higher self, which is the eye of the storm, you know. Um, I remember someone giving me a channeling one time that was really powerful, and she was like, "I'm seeing your higher self," and she was in an altered state, and it was a really like, you know, intense moment. And she's like, "It's just holding this flame, this energy, and forever and ever and ever and ever and ever and ever, you know, just like she kept like looping on that. It's like forever and ever and ever, and it's just like a rock, you know, in this power of who you are at your core, right? It's unmovable, it's
Mm-hmm.
unfazed by any of these ups and downs and lefts and right. So it's I still experience them, but with some sense of detachment now,
Right. Not
which
over
is
identifying with
really
them.
helpful. How about
Yeah.
you? Have you gotten better at navigating that, I would imagine?
Oh, yeah. I mean, when I came into what I call my human awakening, because I was always trying to awake spiritually and it was taking me out of my humanity. So, my
Mm.
biggest awakening was actually my human awakening in
Mm.
sisterhood,
Interesting.
which auspiciously happened through my moon cycle. That's a whole other thing. And I remember the main piece was about was feeling, and I held myself on my couch for a week straight, feeling every feeling without identifying with it,
Mm.
just
Wow.
allowing it to move through me and inform the true nature of my being. So I laid on my couch, and somehow like nobody was around for this week, and I had like, very little obligation this particular week, because it was like this almost this faded homecoming of feeling
Wow.
everything from anger, rage, allowing self-hatred to disappear. I had
Wow.
somebody give me a message: Zoe, when you hurt yourself, you hurt the world. When you love yourself, you love the world. And I all of a sudden felt this like cosmic responsibility to love myself so that I
Wow.
could be that for the world, so that I could love the world through me. And so
Wow.
I devoted myself to feeling all the feelings I had run from my whole life. So that was, you know, self-judgment, fear, anger. I let anger move through me for 2 days straight. It was not comfortable.
Wow. Wow.
It was like if I had to write fuck on pieces of paper and stomp around and scream. And then I remember I had this whole like emotional exorcism. And then I laid in my car at the park listening to Bob Marley. Every little thing's going to be all right. And I just like
Oh.
let the
Wow.
universe lullaby me back to love through all of the human emotions and all of the different things, and learning exactly what you shared, to not identify with them. And the biggest place that I put this into practice was when I was with family, because all of this like ancient stuff would come up. And I remember I would be with them and something would come up, like sadness or feeling abandoned or feeling misunderstood. And I would just be able to like, I was in such communion with myself and my emotions that I would get up, I would go to the bathroom, I would cry, I would let it move through me. I would like journal in a notes app about what I was feeling. And I'd be able to come back without identifying that pain with that person and feeling like it was
Mm.
their fault, but being
Wow.
able to go really be with myself and move it through. And that practice helped me feel so empowered in my
Wow.
life. And like,
Yeah.
it allowed me to build a trust with myself that, like you said, was impenetrable, because I could always come back to that that point of infinite awareness.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, that's
So
very powerful. Very powerful um to navigate. And it's like and then it's like, how much bandwidth now did you free up for yourself in that
mhm,
process? It's like
mhm.
taking out the trash in a certain way. And yeah, so
Totally. I
very
always
cool.
even like to say that taking out the trash can be a spiritual practice. You're taking this shit out of your house that doesn't,
Yeah.
it's expired.
Right.
It maybe smells, and you're taking it out. And when I take out the trash, I like to envision that I'm holding everything, all the baggage, everything I'm ready to let go of. And I'm
Mm.
really present with it. And then I throw it away and I can feel this release, and I just will like
Yeah.
snap, and I'm like, okay, let it go. It's like
Cool.
everything can be that. We can be in a ritualistic, ceremonial communion with every morsel of life. Even when
Yeah.
I eat food, like last night, Teddy's on calls in the living room. I'm like, I want to go into ritual with this meal I made in my virgin mojito, and I had lit my candle, and so I put my earbuds in and I start listening to a song called Compassion, because
Hmm.
there were parts of me that are like, oh, I want to just be in this ritual. And I start listening to music and it immediately drops me in. And that's another piece I feel, is that sensorial awareness of our existence,
Yeah.
sensuality is just the activation of our senses and being able to
Mm.
enjoy this human experience from like spirit to matter, right? And that
Yeah.
is like everything from eating food to how you prepare the food to closing your eyes and really being present with every flavor and the food itself and the love that you infused into the food. Praying over your food, my little prayer that I'll share with those of you listening every time I eat is, I bless myself, I bless this food, I eat this food with gratitude. And
Mm.
it's just that little, these little
That's
ways
cool.
that we can show life that we're present with it, we're grateful, and yeah, goes back to
I
Eckhart Tolle,
love
the
that.
power of now.
I love that. I love that, I mean, even taking out the trash, you making everything sacred really is what you're doing, right? And you're extracting value out of it that otherwise, what is the difference to you in the world with you being so present with the trash and then making it into, a ritual? And I think that's why you have the success that you do at such a young age and everything like that is because um, you are taking full advantage of you're transmuting everything when you live like that. And I always say anything good that I've ever accomplished comes from just the ability to make up good stories around whatever's transpiring, right? And so understanding that you are the creator and created rolled into one, so the energy you infuse into anything determines what it becomes. It's all sort of neutral by if you decided that the trash is stinky and bad and it's maybe I'm unsafe, I'm going to get germs, I'm going to get sick from being close to it while I take it out. Abracadabra translates to I create as I speak, right? Your words are your wands, you're spelling, you're casting a spell with these thoughts and beliefs and ideas. And so, understanding like, oh, I'm creating how this shows up and what it represents and what it means. And this idea that, everything is neutral by design and we get to decide what energy we imbue in it. And it can have a high side and a low side. That's such an empowering perspective to understand, and you definitely have done that.
Mm, thank you for that reflection. And yeah, that's exactly it. I always say that about journaling too. Your pen is the wand and the paper is the
Mm,
spell book and your words are the
right,
spells. So it's like,
right,
what story are you creating? And also, but not bypassing, right? Feeling the totality
right.
of your humanity and I always say, like, how can you ritualize the experience? Like even grief. I lost my
Mm-hmm.
grandmother recently, and I was able to ritualize death in the
Mm.
most beautiful, loving,
Oh,
benevolent. I mean, I broke open again and again and
wow,
again, but I was able to alchemize it and make a ritual of it and create an altar of love for death and like
wow.
really be in this experience with death. And it's something that terrifies most of us to talk about, no matter how enlightened we are. That is such a big unknown, but it is the thing that we are all going to experience at some point. I believe that a lot of what we experience in life is preparing us for that. Even a breakup, it's how can you let go and be broken open by this experience and surrender it to source and trust that everything that you're surrendering, the car, the person, the belief systems, the patterns, whatever it is that you're attached to, because there's nothing that we're attached to more than our life.
Right. That's for sure. That's for sure. And understanding that, you know, birth or death is a birth of sorts. When you're born to this dimension, you're dying to where you departed from, in a sense. And when you're dying in this dimension, in this plane of existence, you're being born back into what I think is more naturally home for us, or our more expanded version of home, more consistent home, I guess you could say. And um, that makes it beautiful. It makes it wonderful. And once again, like turning this thing that is considered the most tragic, awful thing into a ceremony, into something powerful. And um, that's the path. You're doing it.
How can you ritualize all of it? Yeah,
Yeah.
and continue to return to that 0 point. I always see the infinity. I know you're very connected to this, to the
Mm-hmm.
infinity symbol and the eight. is like the dualistic nature, right? Matter and spirit, masculine and feminine, light and dark. And that middle point is the point of equanimity, the point of
Mm-hmm.
what we are that is impenetrable. And when we meditate, when we go into devotional practice, when we're in ceremony, when we're making love, we can come to that 0 point, right? We can
Right.
allow these two dualistic energies to bring us into that unification and experience even like micro deaths while we're alive. Orgasm in French, le petit, it means the
It's like the
petite
little
little
death or
death.
something.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've heard this. Yeah, yeah,
Which
yeah.
is why I'll just share really quickly, but a big practice for that 0 point that I teach women is, self pleasure and like taking back pleasure as this meditational practice where you're actually
Mm,
working with your light body. You're
yeah.
working with these energetics of life force, creational energy from the sacral, from the womb, right? Your portal of creation where you birth matter, right? As
Mm-hmm.
mother embodied,
Mm-hmm.
and you take spirit, you're incepted by light, the divine masculine, to bring it into form and to be able to go to that 0 point, to have that little death of self,
Mm,
to be
yeah.
incepted by something greater is
Yeah.
such a power play.
Oh, yeah. Beautiful. Beautiful. Wow. I can't believe we're already to an hour. Um, so I feel like we could go on and on and on for a long time. As we sort of start to wind down a little bit, I would like to shift and hear from you. One of my cliche now. This one, I always say my cliche opener and my cliche closing question. This one's a little less cliche and more like just story time. I love stories of synchronicity, serendipity, positive paranormal stories, and that's my jam. And we've shared a bunch, and so I'm wondering if you have something fun up your sleeve to share.
There's so many stories.
I know.
Um, I think I've shared,
It's a hard question sometimes because then your like brain is like, hold on, what? Where do I begin?
I've definitely shared quite a few, but I'll just share one of so many, I've shared this story so many times. You know this story, but it's just one of those ones where it's like uncanny flirt, hug, kiss, all the things from God. Um, on 4th of July a year ago. And it's when you're tracking these things, it all weaves, right? Tantra means to weave. It's also tantric. So a
Mm,
year ago on 4th of July, 2023, I was with Teddy and another friend, and I was talking about how license plates flirt with us. And they were like, yeah, totally. And uh, my girlfriend was like, Zoe, if you had a license plate, if you could customize a license plate, what would it say? And I said, I don't care as long as it has 777 in it, because that's the one number that sends a chill up my spine that
mm,
shows me that I'm in full alignment, right? It's like this
mhm,
big kiss from God. And I want to be able to drive my car and know that other people who feel resonance with this number can feel that
mm.
angel number through my car, through wherever I
Cool.
go.
That's a
And
great thought.
so then, yeah, I didn't have a car for a year. And my dad, right, as this pillar and expression of the masculine of God, was like, Zoe, I'm going to get you a car and I'm going to pick it out. And I said, okay, full surrender, full trust. Dad, you
Hmm.
go for it. Thank you so
Yeah.
much.
Twist my arm, Dad.
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, okay. And so then he finds my car and he goes, okay, we're gonna go look at it. And it was during the Lionsgate portal as well. And we go look at it, we turn the corner. I can feel magic in every situation. So I could feel that there was this like magic in the air. And I'm walking to the car with him. And we get to the car and the license plate is 777. And it's a
Oh,
Kia Soul. And I'm just
oh,
like, what?
no, that's it.
I
I
messaged
don't
them
even
and
have
they're
to
both
look it.
freaking out. Yeah, they're like,
Yeah.
whoa, you manifested that in a month. Not only the
Yeah.
car, but the license plate.
It's a different way to get a vanity plate right there.
Exactly.
You didn't
Work
have
with
to
the
pay
universe.
and fill out a form. That's so cool. I love that. I love that. Such a good story.
But it's
And I love
moments
how it
like
even
that.
just it went up from there. Now that's the car that got taken, and then now you have something that you love even more.
Right. And the Tesla's been on my vision board for 2 years, and
Yeah.
it's been something in my field for a while.
Mm,
And this is the practice that I desire things and I let them go and I go, God, this or something better. Please
yeah.
just bring into my field that which is of greatest service to me and those around me.
Mm,
And I find that when I have these manifestation synchronicity stories and I share them, I also allow other people to plug into that frequency in the quantum, see what's possible, and see that, like, this is what can happen when we track these synchronicities, work with our desire, hand it up to the universe.
Yeah.
And yeah. So I would love to ask you the same question, Brandon, because
Oh,
I know
we're
you
gonna
have a
ping pong it.
plethora.
Oh man. Let's see. Well, let's see. One that comes to mind, I have so many. I share a few in the book, but one in the book pertains to, we talked about just the cover art. Um, there. So that comes to mind. So I'll just go ahead and share that one. Um, as I told you, I dreamed about the concept for the book. Then I, go and look for the title. I come up with the title idea, and I go and I search, and I find, oh my gosh, someone did a short essay that was kind of popular almost 100 years ago. Oh my gosh, it was published on my birthday, which, by the way, is a synchronicity in of itself, because my birthday is my dad's birthday and my grandmother's birthday and great grandmother's birth died on that day. And you've heard all this. I met a soulmate on that day, and her boyfriend committed suicide on that day. His name was Anson, and all my relatives are from Anson, North Carolina, with that birthday. So that's a small one baked in. So when I saw, July 28th is the day, I saw that the book had been published, this old version of the Golden Key. I'm like, yeah, that's the name. So then I go to my dear friend Vajra a few weeks later, who is one of the most talented visionary artists in the world. You're familiar with. He used to have a bunch of pieces here at the Manor. Now he just has the one that is in my room. You might remember that it's called the Demiurge, and the painting right when you walk in my room on the left behind the couch. And kind of like a very multi-dimensional looking being.
Yes. Yeah.
So that one is in the book too, as a magical story around that. There's so many layers, but I won't go into that one. But I reached out to him because he's such a talented artist and dear friend. And I was like, Vajra, I had this dream about this book idea. And, then there was the synchronicity with my birthday and this old version, and it was gamified too. And, I'm giving him my whole pitch leading up to, will you help me to do the cover art of the book? And so I do my whole spiel to try and get Vajra pumped up, hear this world-class artist. Yay, will you just help me out, man? No big deal. Just make a piece like behind me, if you can see this. That's not his, but it's another talented visionary artist. But so I give him my whole spiel, and he goes, okay, Brandon, are you done? And I'm like, yeah, I'm done. And he's like, okay, now let me tell you about my dream. He's like, a few months ago, I dreamed that I was at the Mystic Manor and at your place, and I was hunting for the key to everything. And he went into this whole dream. It was this elaborate dream, right? Like wild goose chase and him trying to get the key and protect it and all this stuff. And he goes, but I came out of that dream and it was so impactful that I started working on an art piece of a key. So when you ask me, will I make the cover art for your book of a golden key? I will have to change the color, but here's the work in progress of a key that came from a dream I had about hunting for the key to everything at the Mystic Manor.
Wow.
Yeah.
Full chills.
Yeah, that was
and
cool
also
one.
not surprised.
A really cool one, and yeah, it ended up really good, and you'll see it if you get the book.
Beautiful. And thank you for offering that to the listeners, your book.
Yeah,
as a
yeah,
gift.
Yeah. It's that was sort of the vision for it. Part of the vision for it is to just get the information out there, and so yeah, it's been fun, and I feel I always call it the good kind of selfish. Once you understand that what I do for you, I'm doing for myself, and therefore I must feel the energetic repercussions of it. So it's like, oh, okay, like Gandhi understood this. I think he said, if you want to find yourself, lose yourself in the service of others. Mm-hmm. And the reason that holds true, I believe, is because there are no others. So it's in giving that we receive. So, I heard it said one time that when you die, I think it was like a near-death experience or something. They said, I had this experience of getting like a party for, my death, my return to the afterlife, which is something I've always held a vision of. Like, I want there to be a party, and I want everyone who's been in my life to be there, who played
Mm.
whatever role. And I just have this vision and desire for that. And so this person was describing my sort of dream of what it would be like when you cross back over. And he's like, and what was so cool is at this event, I got to not only see and feel every person that I positively impacted
Mm.
and experience the goodness that came from it, but everyone that
Chills.
they positively impacted. And it's just like,
Mm.
can you imagine like getting to feel the ripple of impact, the true ROI
Mm-hmm.
in your life, of how many people did you touch and make a difference for and shift for them and their children and their whoever, they were more healed and aligned because of something that you offered. And then, therefore someone else is. And it's just like, wow, it's like, I call it the good kind of selfish. It's like, I want to have the
Mm.
most like experience in that way I possibly can. So,
Yeah, I think about that almost every day.
wow.
How much am I in service? And like, if I leave at any point, will I feel truly like satisfied and fulfilled with how much I did on this planet and what fully living my design? And I had a mentor who told me that when she was, I think, 38, she had a near death experience, and these beings were there and they said, "Not yet. You haven't touched enough lives,"
Yeah.
and
Wow.
sent her back. And then she's been on a path of service ever since. And so I think
Wow.
that's like a beautiful way to tie up the episode, is that it does come back to service. And like Pablo Picasso's quote, the meaning of life is to find your gift, and the purpose of life is to give it away. And going
Mm,
back to that download that my friend had when I was coming into the human awakening of, when you love yourself, you love the world, right? So it's
yeah.
bigger than you always, because you are a micro to the macro. And
Yep.
during our Lionsgate ceremony that we had 2 days ago, the biggest practice that we had was, I created these diamonds. One was called the Gem
Mhm.
of Generosity and the Diamond of Desire. To unlock prosperity, you get to honor your desire, but you also get to tap into the gem of genuine generosity from your heart, right? Because
Yeah.
that to me is where true prosperity is unlocked and comes in. No good deed and nothing that you do goes unnoticed by the divine, right? Nothing
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
do in your heart goes unnoticed. So it was a
Mm,
practice of writing down all of the ways that you can serve and show up all of your gifts. If you're listening to this, I invite you to do this as well. I'll link it in the show notes. The Gem of Generosity, write down everything that you have to offer the world to other people, everything you can be in service toward. And the Gem of Desire, the Diamond of the Desire, is everything you desire, right? And then take the Diamond of Desire and offer it to the fire. Let it
I love
go.
that. I love that.
And keep the Gem of Generosity and put it somewhere where you can see it often and know that
Mm,
that's your gift.
yeah. Wow. Yeah. I think, and all that makes me think of, there's this great short video kind of meme that went around years ago, and it really stuck out for me because it showed all these people sitting around like a pot of like stew or something. And it was a cartoon, and they had these really long spoons, and they were like trying to dip and eat, but the spoon was too long. And so they're all struggling sitting around it until all of a sudden one of them figures out, like, hold on. And he dips, scoops, and he holds it out across to the person
Mm.
across from him. And then they realize, oh, if we all feed each other, everyone gets fed. And so it's truly, this idea of it's in giving that you receive, because you're always doing it to self. If you have the opportunity to ever give away what you want for yourself, do it, do it, do it, because that's how it actually, the energy can move and come back to you. And so it's such a powerful practice to realize, uh, this is the formula to get what I want, is by giving, helping enough others get what they want, and you get what
Yes.
you want. Like, what
Yes.
a divine design, right?
Yeah.
Like, and as long as we're operating outside of that, you're not playing with the formula that, you know the creator embedded is the path to the greatest fulfillment and success. So we
Right.
got
The
to all
law
get
of
with the
Dharma.
program.
The
Yeah.
law of Dharma. Yeah. And that goes for celebration too. When you see someone has the success you want, the thing that you want, right?
Yep.
Celebrate it in
Yeah.
the quantum. Like right before I got my new car, I've been carless for a while. My sister was gifted a Range Rover.
Mm.
And it happened
Wow.
after a deep conversation her and I had, where I was helping her come back to faith and like hand it over and use prayer and like write a new story, because it was a story that
Yeah.
was being told. The next morning she texted me and she's like, "Oh my God, Zoe, there's something to this. Either you did some magic or we like unlocked something, because I was gifted this thing." And my immediate response was to celebrate it so big. Not even
Wow.
because I wanted the thing, but because I was so glad that it happened. And then she sent me a page in the book, The Power, I gave her a while ago. And it was a piece on like a sibling celebrating her sister getting a new car. And then she got a new
Wow.
car recently after. And I'm like, okay, that's a flirt. And then 2 weeks later,
Wow.
I got my car. And I'm like,
Wow.
because
What a
when we
trip.
celebrate, yeah, because like when
Yeah.
somebody is etching something into the quantum being the field of limitless potentiality, and we can celebrate that and tap into it, we get to step into that space that's been etched in the quantum, because we're observing it, so we can like connect with it, you know. And that goes back to that piece. It's all one. So how can
Yeah.
we celebrate these pieces and know that their victory is our victory, and vice versa?
I love that story. I'm so glad you shared it. One of the things I always seek to remember and share with people any chance I get is, it's very easy in this day and age to compare yourself. How big is your podcast? How many downloads does it have? How many likes do you have in social media? Followers, all, and then of course people are presenting their glossiest self
Mm-hmm.
oftentimes. And then we can fall into this like comparison thing.
Mm-hmm.
It's so easy now, more easier now more than ever. And instead of like, let's say you see the thing that you want, the new car or the person with the vacation that you dream of, or the body that they've cultivated at the gym that you want for yourself, or whatever it is, right? Instead of seeing that thing on your social feed, let's say in this example, and saying, I feel resentful, or I'll never have that, or here's why not, creating separation between you and the thing that you
Mm-hmm.
admire. What if you saw it through the lens of, out of all the things that could be popping up in my field, the infinite amount of things that are vying for my precious attention, programming and, shows and, you name it. I mean, it's so much, it's overwhelming these days. This understanding this idea that that which is likened to itself is drawn, or water seeks its own level. So you can only connect with something if you're some way, shape, or form a vibrational match for it, right? And I'm such a close vibrational match to this car that I would want for myself. It's already popping up in my field, very closely related via my sister. Yes, it's getting closer. Yes,
Yes.
it's getting closer. And so when you see it through that lens of, I
Yeah.
wish I could have the thing or whatever, oh my gosh, it's popping up here out of
It's
all the
here.
things that could be popping up, because it's getting closer. It's because it is an extension of me. And the difference between that perspective and
Mm-hmm.
separation and resentment and jealousy and all the things that actually push it away, it's night and day.
Right. Instead of being intimidated, being inspired, or
Yeah.
seeing it from that scarce perspective, going, "Oh, wait,
Right.
no, this just cues that there's like abundance that is here." I always say the antidote to comparison is gratitude, like genuine
Mm,
gratitude.
I
And
love
then
that.
even being grateful for the things that you're comparing yourself to for exactly the reason that you just shared.
Yeah. Wow. I love that. It's definitely the antidote. And I am super grateful for you being the antidote that you are, Zoe. You are such a beautiful reflection. I love and
Oh.
adore you and appreciate everything about you. And yeah, this has been so much fun.
Likewise, Brandon. Thank you for coming and sharing your love and your golden keys with this audience, and for your devotion to your podcast and all the lives that you've touched through it. I always say service is love in action. So thank you for
Mm,
being an embodiment of that. And I'm
mm,
so happy that we got to do this together.
me too. Me too. It's been a long time coming, and hopefully it'll happen again. I imagine it will at some point in divine timing. I would like to
Mhm.
ask my cliche closer before we sign off here. Well, two questions. One, what is the best way for my followers or listeners of my podcast to actually connect with you, find you? Obviously,
Mhm.
Better It Gets podcast, but any other thing that you want to share or throw out there?
Yeah, so I have my new website out, www.zoedanecoaching.com. And I have a lot of offerings and services for women, but I also offer hypnotherapy sessions just to start to work with everything Brandon and I have been talking about in this episode. And I have my podcast, yes, the Better It Gets podcast. And my Instagram is at Zoe Dane. That is where I share a lot of my content. That's where I feel like that's my platform for service. That's where I like
Mm,
to, yeah, share the transmissions and the pieces that want to be shared with the collective.
cool.
That.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, sorry, go ahead.
And Brandon, I would love for you to
Hmm.
share where people can
Yeah, yeah,
find
yeah.
you.
So Positive Head Podcast. You can find it anywhere you get your podcast. Um, and yeah, otherwise you can check out, did a late night style show called Optimistic, spelled with a Y, like mystical. You can find Optimistic, YouTube, optimistic.tv. We're about to start doing more of those as a live streamed version. I'm very excited to say we filmed a bunch pre-COVID, and then the COVID asteroid hit, and it kind of threw a wrench in that. That was really, you know, the vision was the evolution of the podcast doing something video centric, especially back then, 2019, where, now everyone's at least showing video like this, but then it wasn't so prevalent. It was mainly audio podcasting. And so I was like, okay, if I'm going to step into video, I want it to be something more robust, like, late night style show, and, full, like, visionary artist, and live painting and musical performance and interview. And, we did a bunch of those episodes, and some of which still haven't even been released because COVID hit and we kind of put it on halt. And now that's going to be coming back. So I'm really excited for that. So yeah, stay tuned for that, optimistic.tv, or also Optimistic on YouTube. And then, yeah, otherwise I don't post a ton on social media. I mean, a little bit, and I am on social. So probably the best, most active place is Instagram, and Optimistic same way, although it's spelled a little weird because it's zero, PTIMYSTIC. So if you just search Optimistic with an O, you'll find someone else. So, or you can search my name, Brandon Beecham. And I am, Zoe, I also have another cool thing, that I just got a pair of these Ray-Ban Meta glasses gifted to me. And I don't know if you're familiar with them, but I just had the idea. I just started playing with it and setting them up in the last few days. And it's like, if I ever am doing anything, I want it to be something unique. And one of the things that I've decided I've gotten the inspiration for in the last few days is I'm going to, here in Venice Beach, it's pretty interesting down at the Venice Boardwalk, do like synchronicity walks where I just turn them on and just talk, live stream, and have people like co-create like an experience of what we're looking for, what we want to manifest, or just see what happens by creating like some loose formatting around, this idea of synchronicity walks, which I've always been interested in, and just like live streaming it. So I'm envisioning doing that on my Instagram soon as well. So
I love that. You know, it's so funny. Right before we got on together, I wanted to go on a synchronicity walk and listen to
really,
music and just let the universe flirt with me on my walk. It's one of my favorite things to do. I swear, that's where I
that's
came
so
up with the
funny.
quote, Tantra is flirting with infinity, because I used to go on these walks and I would be in this tantric flirtatious communion with like the blades of grass and life,
Mm-hmm.
and the numbers and the people and all the things. I would just go and I'm like, okay, how can I be in the miracle of life today, and feel the synchronicities and let those guide me. So I love that, because I literally wanted to go on a walk before our episode.
Wow. So like we have a synchronicity around the synchronicity walk.
Of
It
course.
gets so layered. It's just like
On brand. And
so
also I
on
wanted to
brand.
share, I wanted to share also, I mean, just like to seal it up with the kiss of the synchronicities, the fact that I'm doing this episode with you right after Marianne Williamson and she had to reschedule. I will say Marianne Williamson has been one of my biggest mentors. Her book, A Return to Love, is my spiritual love Bible. It is my
Yeah.
favorite book of all time. You know, she talks
Wow.
about everything we're sharing about being a love, an embodiment of love and a miracle worker who,
Mm,
and knowing that anywhere that you are is your ministry. Anywhere that you are,
yeah.
you can be of service. Anywhere that you are, you can flirt with the universe, right?
Yeah.
It really is all in this moment. And so I wanted to offer, I can make a little discount code for your people. I have an 8-day immersion called Quantum Flirtation, and it's
Cool.
all about working. It's for women, but
Mm-hmm.
if you are drawn to that feminine frequency and you're male identified, you can totally get down with it. But it's 8 days, and every day there's a transmission. There's also a radiance protection spell, and a little segment on the difference between flirting from your heart and flirting from your sacral. So, working with
Mm-hmm.
the art of flirtation to engage the universe as your lover.
Oh, wow.
I wanted to offer that. You offered the
Amazing.
golden
Yeah.
key. I'm like,
Very cool. Well, do you want to throw out what that code will be? Since I know we didn't talk about this ahead of time. Do
I'll just
you?
put it out right now.
Yeah.
Pronoia.
Pronoia. All right.
Pronoia is the belief that the universe is conspiring in your favor, and it's the opposite of paranoia. So may that word be the key, the golden
Cool.
key.
Yeah. Well, make sure and send me a link, and then Pronoia is spelled Pronoia.
Noia.
I got that
Yeah,
right. Okay. Cool.
yeah.
All right, Zoe. Well, my final question for you, my cliche closer, is this: in 60 seconds or less, what is the meaning of life according to Zoe Dane?
To live as love,
Easy breezy. My
easy
favorite
breezy.
quote is a remix that I did of a John Lennon quote, um, and it's "Love is the answer now." What was the question?
So very, very similar answers you and I
Yeah,
have.
yeah, that's my little quote on where do I like so Facebook from 15 years ago. You know, you get a quote that's still there. I think so. Zoe, such a pleasure.
Yes.
So glad this is well worth the wait doing this together. And yeah, I look forward to the next time that we get to co create and weave. And yeah, I appreciate all of you out there for tuning in your beautiful brainwaves and incredible hearts to another episode as well.
Yes, and thank you, Brandon, for coming on and sharing your magic and your love and your wisdom and your experiences. I feel that there's so much people can learn. We can learn through storytelling, like you said earlier. So thank you for coming and sharing your stories and your book and really expressing your real-time experience of the better it gets from your
Mm,
beautiful home that you've manifested and
mm,
from the victory of everything that you have stewarded into creation through following the signs and the synchronicities. And also happy
yeah.
birthday.
Oh, thank you for that. Oh, bye. Bye
Mm.
for now, everyone. This was wonderful. We'll catch you next time.
Bye guys, thank you. Mwah.